Welcome everybody to the Coach Brew podcast. This is going to be one of your favorite episodes of all time because, well, you guys love it when I have guests and it's a dialogue, non-monologue. You tell me that all the time. You love my guests. This will be a personal favorite of yours. Why? Because he is a personal favorite of mine. Actually, truth be told, this is going to be a long introduction because I have him sitting in the waiting room. Kind of icing him, if you will, and just letting him sit there. And the guest I have today has been on the show before. He's my favorite author, so every time he releases a new book, I bring him on the show. And it's Dr. Rob Bell. He just released a new book called "I Can't Wait to Be Patient," and the fastest way to get there, which is kind of hilarious, and the duality of it we will get into. But it's every time he writes a new book, I have a new respect and admiration for him. He is what you would call what some of you would call a sports psychologist. Some of you would call him a mental toughness coach. He works in the field of sports psychology, mental conditioning with athletes. He walks his talk, which is an endangered species today, and started working with a number of professional golfers and decided to be a good idea for him to take up the sport of golf. And if you want to learn how to be patient, start playing golf, because that will humble you, and it's an exercise in patience. We'll probably dive into that too. But this is like as a fellow author, this is one of those books, like, I wish I would have written this book. That's how good it is. He is absolutely, I'm very lucky in that he's my favorite author and he's a good friend and colleague. So I've got Rob Bell on timeout. Like I think I called 2 timeouts back to back here to ice him as much as possible before we bring him on. But I'm going to bring him on now. And you are going to love this subject matter. If you're a type A competitive personality who maybe has, a bias to being busy instead of kind of sitting back and letting the game come to you, so to speak, whatever your game is, he's going to change your perspective. It's Dr. Rob Bell. His website is drrobbell.com. The new book is I Can't Wait to Be Patient, and the fastest way to get there. I'm actually so impatient right now. I'm speeding up my rate of speech to bring him on. And Rob, great to have you here.
Thanks, man, for the intro, bud. I'm kind of tearing up, man. I really appreciate that. You mean a lot to me, man. You've helped so many people out, and thank you, man. Look forward to the conversation. But we don't need to speed up the rate of talk, though. People listen to it at 1.5 speed anyway, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I do.
So, how'd you feel there, just sitting there waiting in the wings? Were you getting anxious, stressed out? Like I kind of iced you, like we iced the kicker in football, and we, that's just a wonderful thing. Or were you doing some like deep breathing, meditation, visualization? What were you doing, man?
No, I was in the moment. I was just really listening, man, and appreciating that. I think too often, like, we have to wait, right? We don't want to wait, but we have to wait. And since we don't like waiting, we just get distracted. So it's like, what we do is we go on a site, we scroll, we distract ourselves. Yeah. With that phone. And, no, so just being in the moment is a gift in itself, and we hear it all the time, and in the mindfulness. But I'm just really trying to appreciate it through time, and I'm ego driven like anybody, man. So I love hearing the good stuff, and I just I appreciate the words of encouragement, man. That favorite author and book you would love to have written, so that means a lot.
I'm not trying to be your hype guy. I'm being sincere.
No, I know.
I get a little smarter every time I read your stuff, man. I actually get a lot smarter every time I read your stuff. So, but I did want to ice you there because that's something you talk about in the book. It's, I think, a fascinating subject. If we want to like kind of take it in the sports direction here, right out of the gates, you see icing the kicker in football all the time. It has everything to do with patience, and it is counter. There's so much of this book is like counterintuitive advice that when you really dig in, makes perfect sense. But when you look at it on the surface, you think, oh, there's no way. So explain to everyone, number one, what icing the kicker is in football. Number two, why coaches do it, think they need to do it. And then we can debunk the myth that it's a good thing.
Yeah, man. Well, so icing the kicker is the philosophy that coach is going to call timeout to add this psychological pressure to a kicker so they, think about it more. And just thinking about it more is then going to allow that pressure to come on, and that they're going to miss the kick. So the fact that they do it, though, the real reason is because we want to influence the outcome.
And coaches are control freaks, right?
Absolutely. You know what I mean?
They feel like they have to do something. Is that,
if they don't call timeout, the very first question that is going to be asked by the media, why didn't you call a timeout in that situation? Like, you could have done something. But the thing is this, and it's starting to turn now, because look, the NFL kickers are so good anyway that it doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
It's beyond any kind of statistical significance that a kicker is going to miss no matter what you do, right? And so it's like, even sometimes if the conditions are bad and they're calling timeout, it gives them more time to prepare, clear the spot, really figure out what is that wind doing,
Mm-hmm.
So it's even counterintuitive to it. But we have this action bias that doing something has to be better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
And kickers are going to miss, but they're not going to miss because the timeout is called. And you'll see me do it all the time, especially in the NFL, that I'm going to show it. Like, look, icing the kicker doesn't work. Icing the kicker doesn't work. Icing the kicker doesn't work. And then the one time that they miss, boy, the messages come in. Oh, I thought you said icing the kicker doesn't work. Well, look, I mean, it's not that a kicker
showed you 99 times it didn't, and you want to show me the 100th.
Yeah, it's like, yes, kickers are going to miss from time to time, no question. But it's like, so it's just that action bias that we have. And that's why I had to put that one in the book, is because we have this action bias. It is the assumption that doing something in every situation has to be better than doing nothing. And that is just simply not the case.
So me making you sit in the waiting room, we're recording this on Zoom, folks. Me icing you, making you sit in the waiting room didn't actually change the quality of your first segment here coming out of the gates, apparently. Wow.
Unless I missed a kick.
Right?
Yeah.
So I love that. I use that as a metaphor here. And it's why I wanted to lead off the podcast with icing the kicker, because like some people who listen to this are coaches, athletes, they work in athletics, but others are entrepreneurs, they're business people. And, hustle culture, hustle porn that you see on the internet, like the Gary V kind of stuff. And like, I call it entrepreneur, because a lot of it's BS. And, they talk about how you got to work, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, shouldn't take a day off. We have to take massive action if you want to be successful. And this is simply not true. It's patently false. Sometimes being patient, doing nothing is the best thing. I learned that in a book I just read. It's called I Can't Wait to Be Patient, and the Fastest Way to Get There by Dr. Rob Bell, who's my guest today. And it's akin to like why coaches ice the kicker. They feel like they have to do something. They always feel like they have to be doing something to control an outcome. And entrepreneurs are the same way. What more could I be doing? Right. Well, how about just working smarter, not harder? Sometimes doing less, and the idea of letting the game come to you, whatever your game is. Rob really speaks very intelligently to in this book. It's there are a lot of different analogies, and he draws from a lot of different arenas, kind of explaining this whole action bias versus doing nothing and being patient. we're kind of working backwards here. I want to talk about a couple of things in the book, and then we'll talk about, your motivation to write it and everything. But I really want to unpack this action bias early here. One of the things that struck me is, and this is a very timely book on a bunch of fronts, but on one of the fronts, like you're seeing a lot of people. First of all, a lot of people die cardiac arrest in this country. What's the statistic, Rob? How many people on? Let me look it up. I have it here. Hang on.
Oh, good, because I don't remember off the top of my head, man.
Yeah, it's like a certain number of people. Heart attack occurs in the United States approximately every 40 seconds, and it kills over 1 million people annually. And now you talk about in the book, death rates of people hospitalized for heart attacks from 2002 to 2011, when the top cardiac surgeons weren't actually at those hospital facilities. And it's fascinating to me, and again, it speaks to action bias. So we got to unpack that a little bit, kind of explain that why less people, like, what was the mortality rate in the hospital lower when the top cardiologists were away?
Yeah. Yeah, this is exactly it. It was, and it speaks to the action bias, because I couldn't just have in there about icing the kicker because people are going to dismiss that. So let's look at real research. When the top cardiologists in the United States were away at conferences, which are twice a year, the biggest conferences, and also whenever doctors have been on strike, not a very popular opinion, but whenever doctors have been on strike across the world, mortality rates did not go up. They went down, or they stayed the same, but they didn't increase. Well, why would that be? If the top doctors were away, why would the mortality rate stay the same or decrease? And the reason why got back to those then that were there weren't going to be doing these elective surgeries, weren't going to just do something. They were going to wait and see. And it was the waiting and seeing part that, and it's not like, okay, well, when they came back, I mean, this was 30 days after. So it wasn't the fact that, well, just, these surgeries just weren't done. I mean, they weren't done at all. So it's like, we have this action bias. Even when we go to the doctor, the worst thing we want to hear is, why don't we'll just wait and see how it goes. I mean, nobody wants that, right? We want a pill, we want something. So there's even this pressure for doctors to do something.
To prescribe, let's say you come in with a virus and you're like, oh, can I get some antibiotics?
Exactly.
It's not bacterial. Antibiotics won't do anything. But so often, don't doctors prescribe antibiotics unnecessarily? You had mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole slew of research there in the medical community about, over prescriptions, being written, no question when it comes to that. And it was just, it really got to the point. I was like, look, man, even the best in the world are doing something. And it really just spoke to the action bias, man, of, one of the best things we can do is just wait and see. And when we do that, really what we're doing is we're trusting the process of time. We don't want to trust the process of time. We no longer have to wait for many things. I can order something. I ordered something this morning. It's going to be here tomorrow. We don't have to wait. We don't have to wait for a coffee. We don't have to wait for anything, seemingly. But the important things then in life, we still have to wait for. That part we can't fast forward. We can't change.
Yeah, anything worthwhile, you have to wait for.
Yeah. And then it's just that belief then that, it's getting back to doing something has to be better than doing nothing. Don't just sit there, do something. What I'm trying to say is don't just do something, sit there.
Yeah. And we're kindred spirits on this. I'll give the example. I'll go back to when I was coaching. There were times when, like, there's a lightning strike in the middle of like the second or third quarter of a game, and we had to like go in the locker room and literally wait it out. And I would tell my team, whichever team handles the weather delay better is going to be the team that comes out on top today. So, like, what are you doing during this delay? And like some of the kids on the team would want to, let's all go over the scouting report again. We're prepared. We don't need to over prepare. Like, why don't you just relax? Why don't you stretch? Make sure you're hydrated. Just sit back and relax. You know, um, don't waste emotional energy before the game starts back up. Like, and it's that whole idea of sometimes, the best thing you can do is just sort of hit pause. You know, and it's easier said than done, and it's also, I think, something that comes with a function of experience and life wisdom, I guess. You had mentioned in the book the concept of outgrowing procrastination, and I'd love to have you explain a little bit of that to our audience.
Yeah, that was some of the research that was done. I mean, the most, I guess, was the demographic that procrastinates the most, 14 to 29, and it kind of makes sense. Well, why is it that? Well, the maturity process that takes place gets back really to supply demand theory of time. When we're young, we have unlimited supply of time, very little demand. Now, again, as we get a little bit older, and I'll even look at like high school students, the demand, it's increasing, right?
Mhm.
But I mean, let's still be honest here. I mean, they have the supply is still unlimited. The demand has increased. But
Yeah.
as you realize, and as we age and get older, what happens is now we realize that the supply has gone down and the demand has gone up. So this
Yeah.
is supply demand theory of economics. It applies to time as well. So now time is more precious. Now we realize the importance of time. And the study that was done looked at time blocks, meaning they gave these students, you could only study for this time. So it's not like I had to study or even I get to study. It was, I'm allowed to study during this time. And then that is what really increased, the productivity of it, and it decreased the procrastination. And that was the part, is once we really realize the importance of time, we don't procrastinate as much. And it's like, I get it, man. We procrastinate because we get stuff out of it, right? If we didn't get anything out of procrastination, we would never do it. Some of us like to stress or wait until the last minute. I get it. But when we really are in touch with time, we have that, we've improved that relationship with time. We procrastinate way less.
I think it is interesting too that, with that supply and demand theory, you see, it explains why you see older people really address items on their bucket list with some dedication and consistency
Yeah.
versus younger folks. So, it's a calm sense of urgency. It's important. You had mentioned,
That's a good point, Coach Brew. The calm sense of urgency. When we talk about being urgent, look, there's no easing into a street fight. The Dick Vermeil. I love that one, right? If you ease into the game, if you ease into, our plan A, if you ease into how this is going to work out, you're going to get pushed out, because you have to approach everything with a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
But urgency does not mean panic. Urgency means, collectiveness, under control. John Wooden, right? Be quick, don't hurry. That's what we're talking about when we say a sense of urgency. So you do have to approach everything with a sense of urgency. The key is you can't approach the unimportant things with a sense of urgency.
And here's the double-edged sword. I'm so glad you brought up Coach Wooden, because he was not successful at UCLA for, I believe, what was his first 11 years.
I know it was quite a few years. Yeah.
Yeah. But then, quote, once he figured it out, or whatever, he won 13 national championships in a row. And I'm probably butchering the numbers, but he went on an unprecedented streak of championships.
Yeah.
Now,
12 national championships.
What's that?
12 national championships.
Yeah. Consecutive, right? Or
I think there was nine
of them
that
were consecutive. Yeah. So here's the thing, though, you talk about being patient, trusting the process. If he were coaching today, he would have been fired years before he ever figured it out, So there is, that this whole concept is like the ultimate paradox for coaches or even for leaders. If you're a CEO, you're expected to show you're in the business of getting results. And for boosters, for shareholders, for whoever it is, instant gratification takes too long today.
Yeah.
Like, people want results yesterday. How can you be patient, let's say, as a new leader, yet at the same time, take the right action or the right amount of action to start delivering results? Because let's face it, your job security is on the line.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the part, as well as, administrators that are listening to this one, right? You have to be able to trust your coaches. You have to do the due diligence and trust the hire that you make. Point, right? If you're trusting the hire that you make, then what happens is you're not going to be listening to those that are sitting in the stands. And so, look, Jimmy Johnson, Bill Walsh, and Tom Landry collectively started their career 0-25.
Yeah.
All the best in the world. And so, I mean, how many times we see it now, coach, right? I mean, you got 1 year in the NFL or you're gone. That's it. Well, I mean, the problem with that is, what that really speaks to me is you didn't do your due diligence on hiring, or you never trusted that process, because, it makes no sense why you're going to make a hire and fire somebody after 1 year expecting these results, when you have to be able to trust the process of time. And that's the part. I mean, look at the most successful NFL franchise in the history. How many head coaches have they had?
We're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
Yeah, the Steelers, right? Are you kidding me? And correct me if I'm wrong, right? Three. I mean,
whoever was before Chuck Noll. No, it was Chuck Noll.
Yeah.
Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin. That's it. Yeah.
And oh my goodness, man. And it's not like, I mean, I guess people would look at, well, where's the championship every year? Look, you're not going to win a championship every single year. The key is like, have you established the culture? Have you established the arena where people are allowed to fail and people are allowed to, experiment with ideas? And it's always getting back to trusting the process of time. I'm even going past, hey, trust the process. Just trust the process of time. And it's not always going to work out, but too often we just don't allow that to happen. I mean, I kind of get back to,
it feels like nobody allows it to happen anymore.
Yeah, the day you plant the seed is not the day that the fruit is eaten.
Yeah. That's powerful. How do you so a lot of this, I mean, these are just nuggets of wisdom, but so much of this, like anything valuable, it's easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
What's your advice to a leader who, you had mentioned not listening to the people in the stands? A lot of the times, the stands are message boards. The stands are your email inbox. It's Twitter, it's social media.
Oh, yeah.
All the boo birds come out in a lot of different ways. If you were coaching a leader to trust the process of time, trust the hire, trust the fact that you're building the right culture, and eventually the results that you desire and you're seeking will come, how would you coach them to be patient?
Yeah, it's a good one, and I think it's really important that we look at it, right? Because uncertainty is going to exist 100%. There's always going to be uncertainty. And the uncertainty is what makes us really uncomfortable. And the fact that if we keep questioning it, we keep questioning it. And then it's really just getting back to, sharpening the axe, making sure that you believe in yourself and your product and what you're trying to do. First off, that you surrounded yourself with people that aren't just going to be, sycophants and telling you what you want to hear. You have to surround yourself with people that are going to give you honest feedback. And only those that you're going to pay are going to give you honest feedback, right?
Yeah.
And so with that, once you establish that, you have to understand that they don't boo nobodies. They really don't. You know what I mean? They don't boo nobodies. So the fact of if you're getting talked about, you're doing something, you're in a situation where you are doing something, and that part is going to happen. And then what I really just look at, coach, in terms of like leadership and being patient with the results. So that's sort of like the process. The process takes a perspective. You have to take a different perspective when it comes to any kind of endeavor. And then you just have to realize that the process or that the product takes patience. We are designed to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. No question. There's no problem with that. There's no issue with that, right? I don't get in my car and take the slowest route to get there. Nobody does. So because we are designed to get from point A to point B as fast as possible, what happens is now we've just romanticized speed so much that what gets neglected? Rhythm. Rhythm gets neglected. The process gets neglected. And the reason why, coach, the book was written was because of these mountaintop moments. I'm not saying you can't have success from point A to point B as fast as possible. We know that happens, right?
Yeah.
But to sustain it, and to not only sustain it, but to enjoy it. I've always wanted the good times to last a little bit longer. I was
And as a
always
coach, isn't that
depressed.
the hardest thing?
It is, man. You know, it's always
like-
on to the next, on to the
Yeah.
next. And I've always wanted to last a little bit longer. And because I couldn't, it always got back to what do we think about after we win, after we have success? We think about the relationships. We think about the process. We think about it's not so much about having reached it as it is what have we overcome in order to reach it. And that's what we reflect upon. Look, if we fast forward that process, we're not going to enjoy it as much. And we're still going to be looking for whatever it is that we're going to be looking for.
Yeah, the next thing. Yeah. You had mentioned romanticizing speed, and I think that is that's just such a powerful phrase because it's our culture has done that. Attention spans, everything is the fact that we romanticize speed has been so detrimental in so many ways. So when I got out of coaching, I went to work for ESPN Radio. I sold sponsorship and advertising, and I hosted a morning drive sports talk show. And in the time since 2004, we have seen the length of commercials. Like I still follow the radio industry and what's going on and all the media platforms. Think about the length of commercials, how much shorter they've gotten. Because the human attention span, the unwillingness to engage in delayed gratification.
And the part that I love too, coach, is like if we're watching it, they give us a timer in terms of how long we're going to be waiting, right? So we remove the uncertainty in terms of how long are you going to be waiting. That it's not necessarily even the waiting. It's like, how long am I going to be waiting in this line? Why do we have a clicker letting us know when the next train is coming? Because it removes the uncertainty. It gives us, oh, okay, well, I just have to wait 2 minutes. I can do that. But if there's uncertain wait, that's what causes us the stress and the anxiety, right? I don't know when it's going to pay off.
Well, that's the fascinating thing to me is, there are all these studies. I think Gallup does a lot of this research. Like, what are the top fears? Number one fear in the world is public speaking. Number two is like death, snakes, heights. These are the different fears that people have. I would actually say I cannot believe for the life of me how fear of the unknown, that uncertainty you speak of, isn't the number one fear. Because I think about like what stresses me out in my life. It's not snakes, it's not heights, it's not public speaking for sure. It's fear of the unknown.
Right.
So how do we temper that? How do we
so it's like, yeah, and
I'm sure a lot of faith is involved, but how do we go about
and it is. And I think you mentioned it. We look at patience as in, okay, well, that is just delaying gratification and then just waiting, right? It's how we behave while waiting. But there's a couple components that go into actual patience, right? And one of them is, and this is where I think it starts with assurance for a better future, hope. You have to have hope. Hope is powerful. Now, what do we have?
It's the most powerful thing in the world, personally.
And it is, man. And it's like, okay, well, what is our hope rooted in? And that's the part of What does our hope have to be rooted in? Is that it all works out in the end. If it hasn't, it's just not the end. If it's rooted in anything else, other than spirituality or faith, then it's going to be rooted in, I need to do something and I need to do it. And
Yeah.
then what happens is then we're back at the center. And look, I mean, if you stir, my daughter loves baking, right? But if you stir that mix too much, it's no good anymore.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a certain amount of time that you can mix it. So assurance for a better future and hope is what it comes into it. Absence of resentment. If you have this hate in your heart towards somebody else or yourself, it's really tough to be patient because we don't want to sit with that uncertainty. We don't want to sit with that past. Another part of it is, the ability to wait without haste or restlessness. That's the part that I think we all struggle with, right? Because what do? Well, we scroll, man. We get into the distraction. And it's not like the distraction necessarily is bad, but it's our default. It's what we do all the time. And once we do it all the time, now we go from transition to transition without having really utilized that power of time. So, I mean, those are, I think, man, like those are a couple of the components that it comes to, patience. And we just kind of overlook like those pieces.
I don't think people put enough stock in the concept of hope. I want to come back to that for a second, because as a leader, if you're listening to this, as a leader, really what you are at the end of the day is you're a dealer in hope. And you have to give people a reason to hope. You have to remind them how important it is. And I think that, speaks to helping people be more patient, in your company, on your team, in your department, whatever it is, whatever your arena is that you play in. So, in terms of helping people be more patient, as a self-employed person, as a dealer in hope for yourself, Rob, how did you have to take your own medicine, being patient while writing this book? Because we
Yeah,
all
man.
can't wait to get the book done and out there. And so, like, how did you have to take your own medicine, my friend?
That was the funny thing, man. You know what I felt like is I felt like Chris Farley from Tommy Boy. You know what I mean? With the why I suck as a salesman moment. You know what I mean? I have this little,
Yeah.
I pet it and I and then I just kill it. The most successful people I come across, if I ask them, are they mentally tough? Yeah, they're going to say, yeah, right. If you ask me, Rob, are you mentally tough? Yes, in certain parts, and parts of not giving up. Yeah, man, I'm tough when it comes to that. Am I good at letting go of mistakes? No. Am I good at the confidence piece? Yeah, sometimes. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
am I good at not giving up? Yeah. So overall, then, yeah, I'm mentally tough. Am I patient? Not at all. Are the successful people I come across and interview them, are you patient? And I really ask them, are you patient? There are a few that say, yes, I'm really patient. And then they, and I even look at them and I'm like, really? Are you patient? Because I don't see it. So patience is just one of those things that we just don't have. And what's the importance of it? Like, yes, you can be successful without patience. Yes, you can achieve success. No question, man. You're not going to enjoy it. It's not going to last forever. And this too shall pass. So urgency and the hard work is needed 100%. I'm not denying it at all. What is more needed is the recovery. We talk about recovery, we talk about sleep, we talk about hydration, we talk about nutrition. Patience is recovery of the mind. And so, writing the book, I always hated, don't pray for patience or God's going to put you in situations where patience is needed. I never really believe in that because I just don't like it. But writing the book, man, I was put in so many situations, man, where I had to be patient with it, man. I had to be patient. And I'm not really good at patience. I'm going to be honest. So part of this became, and it still is, this journey in terms of, I believe the big things are going to work out. I really don't struggle with that stuff. What I struggle with is in the short term and putting forth such effort into something, and then you should have the payoff. Look, I believe it's going to work out. I know it's going to work out. I think that's what we all have to operate on. And then what it's getting back to is not necessarily with myself, coach. It comes to those in my relationships that I work with. Look, the relationships inside my four walls, they're going to let me know how patient I'm being. And they don't like it when I write the books. I don't like myself when I write the books. You know how it's like, man. It's really isolating. You get really stuck inside your head. And there becomes this piece of it's not coming together. It's not coming together. And then it finally comes together.
Yeah.
And so that's the part of, with the book, man, I'm perfectly admitting this, right? I suck at patience. I'm not good at it. I would, and that's why I had to study it so much, because that's the part where I'm looking at, man, is the recovery piece. If you're not recovering, I don't think we overtrain. I think we under recover.
Absolutely.
And I think it's the under recovery. At some point, if you're under recovering, you're going to get injured. And it's the same thing with the mind and our mental health, man. That's the part. You got to have the recovery piece.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because you think about like children, like small children, toddlers, babies, when they're sleeping, that's actually when the growth is taking place. They're literally growing when they're, call it sleep, call it recovery, call it whatever you want.
It's the same thing when the muscle grows, right?
What makes us think we're any different as adults, really?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, the muscle grows. The muscle isn't going to grow when we're actually lifting the weight. It's going to grow when we're resting and feeding it.
And we have to be patient enough to recover, to be willing to recover. You talk in the book about the path of patience. There's a chapter on that, and the role that spirituality and different religions play in that path and taking people down that path. Can we touch on that a little bit? You had referenced some different scriptures, which I just thought was wonderful, how no matter what you believe, whether you believe it, in a God, whatever God, patience is referenced in all of these different documents, going back to ancient times, whether it's Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, regardless of your faith, the concept of the path of patience.
Yeah, every faith, because I mean, how often do we hear that, right? Hey, if you mention, hey, what comes to mind when you talk about patience? Well, patience is a virtue. That's what we're going to hear all the time. And, why does every faith have patience as a virtue? Every single faith has it. Because I think what they, what the leaders in, each faith was developing was that, and I think what God understood is that we lack the constitutional capability to be patient. And that the faster that things go, because we romanticize it, the more difficult that it is. And what we need is other people. And well, let's just use it at that. We need other people to help us be patient. We need other experiences to help us be patient. We need perspective. We need gratitude. Well, a lot of times, and especially like with Christianity, whoops, sorry, man. That was good for the podcast, huh? What we miss a lot of times, and when I relate to Christianity the most, is that it's a fruit of the Spirit. It's a fruit that we get from that, and that's only comes from our higher power.
And if you think about like our this lifetime, when you look at faith, like it's the ultimate test and delayed gratification. Our lifetime and what comes after. Is the ultimate test and delayed gratification. Yeah, so that's why everyone says patience is a virtue, having faith, like that's why it's referenced so much, I believe. Yeah. What didn't I ask you about this book that you wish I would have asked you in
Great
this
question,
interview?
man. I asked that one in my podcast as well. What question should I be asking? I'm not asking. It's a great question, man. How about the patient personality? Like if you have the patient personality, like,
yeah, some people it seems like are just naturally like patient human beings,
so,
or maybe just have a long fuse at least.
Right. I mean, like the Myers-Briggs test, like Myers-Briggs, I mean, that one, I think probably most people have taken that one, right? It comes with like personality. And it's a great tool, you know what I mean? It's not the best predictive analysis, or tool.
Yeah, if you take it a bunch of times, your profile changes, right?
But it's entertaining and it's good and it's positive, but the one part about the Myers-Briggs is the very last letter, and whether you're a J or a P. And this becomes so
So for people
important.
who don't know what the Myers-Briggs is or
Yeah.
what a JRP is, can you unpack that?
I can't. No, not at this time.
Okay.
Sorry. No. Myers-Briggs personality test gives you 16 different personality types. I believe everybody's listening has heard about it. So you got dogs that are listening to this. They know, they've taken it. So it's going to give you, again, if you're extrovert, introvert, thinking, feeling, all these, different. And the thing is this is how important it is. When people take it, you forget what you are. You know what I mean? So if it's that important, we kind of forget. But the part that we have to realize is the last letter is what we have to remember. And you're either a J or a P.
What are
P.
those? I forget.
So J is like judging, P is like perceiving. But the important parts is how you structure your outside world. That's how you structure your outside world. So if you are a J, you are simply a planner. You like to schedule. Think of your day off. Okay. Do you like to have a plan for your day off and how that's going to go? Or do you just like, hey, man, I just want to wake up and just see whatever happens? So if you are a J, you like to schedule and have a plan for your day off. If you are a P, you are a fly by the seat of your pants. I don't like to have any kind of structure because it packages me in. Doesn't have anything to do with how cool you are or how it's just how you process your outside world. So if you are a J, and this is the tool I think that we take with our life, right? If you are a J or if you know Js, then what you have to do with them is you have to allow them time to process. So if my wife comes in and say, honey, you want to go to lunch? I'm going to freak out for a minute. I'm going to moan. I'm going to complain. And the reason why is because that wasn't part of the plan. I just want to know, hey, what's the frame that we need to have dinner? Because I'm under this sense of urgency at all times, and I'm always getting stuff done that if you hit me with it, I'm going to complain about it. And it doesn't mean I don't want lunch, right? Doesn't matter what it is.
Yep.
So what you have to do, if you have J's that are in your life, you have to hit them and run. You have to hit them with the information. Hey, honey, do you want lunch? I'll be back in 5 minutes, check on you. And you leave them. Because if you don't, you get stuck in their own crap, their own moaning. And now you are drawn right into it because they're complaining about it. Oh man, like why? I don't know if we have time for lunch and stuff like that. And then what happens is now my wife's saying, oh, honey, we've got time for lunch. Like we got this and this. And like, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with you need time to process everything that's going on. If you hit somebody and run, that's the best thing that you can do as coach. If you have J's, P's, they're not without their faults, but P's, you got to kind of push them to closure a little bit more. But J's, man, you got to know if you're a J. You got to know if you're living with J's and working with J's because you got to hit them with the information and run. And then exponentially, you'll see how the aroma of the relationships are going to get better.
That's pretty fascinating. The aroma of the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it is, right? It's what's
right?
happening in the conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, I've noticed it all the times, man. If coach is going to hit somebody with information, it's not that it's wrong. It's that they haven't processed it and they need time to process the information. Well, if you hit them with something and time is of essence, they're going to struggle.
It's if you don't take anything other than that away from the Myers-Briggs, it is huge. It's the last letter in your personality profile and what you can do with that to improve relationships. That's huge. I'm an ENFJ allegedly.
I think that's what I am too. I know I'm a J. Yeah, I'm an ENFJ.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah. Those are the great coaches, right? And great teachers, ENFJ.
Of course. It must be. I mean, that's what we are.
Right.
So let's talk about this. Hacks, shortcuts, tactics, tricks, things that kind of like supposedly accelerate growth, accelerate results, quote, productivity secrets, all these things, like they sound great. It's marketing sizzle in my mind, but there seems to be to me, there seems to be very little stake there. Um,
Yeah.
are there shortcuts? Like, is there a time to break that rule of being patient? Do you
Well,
believe
and
that
again, this is why it was so difficult to write, because urgency is important. Action changes everything. We know that, right? Well, I mean, you cannot go to any kind of motivational book or saying, and it doesn't say you got to do the work, right? Don't just think about it. You got to do the work. I totally agree, man. That's why this book is only written for dogs. It's only written for people that are on that journey of
Yeah.
trying to really, achieve stuff. So with that said, this is what I say we need to focus on. All right. Let's focus on rhythm rather than speed.
Right.
The rhythm of your life, the cadence of your life, because that part has increased so much, is we need to be urgent only towards that which is important. If we are urgent towards getting to dinner, making sure we get that refill of coffee, if we are urgent towards, getting a reply now, what happens is now that's causing the stress response and the angst response, and now that is going to bleed into all areas of life. So focus on rhythm, not speed. And I put in there at the end of the book, that's where I put in there, hey, here is the path to patience. And you're going to have people that, look, if you fast forward to that, got it, man. You need to start with the beginning of the book the most. What's the way, coach, that we focus on rhythm rather than speed? Let's just focus on the transitions in life.
Mm-hmm.
What's the transition look like, man? Because if you have no white space at all in the calendar, well, how are you transitioning from one to another? You don't.
You're constantly in crisis mode, and
Yeah, man.
that's
Code
why you're
blues.
frustrated, right?
Code blues all day. And it's
Yep.
not necessarily what the issue is. It's the fact that we haven't processed it, man. So you got to focus on the transitions. Make sure we're showing up to every single meeting, cool, calm, and collected. All that does is take time.
So this is the most recent book you've written since COVID, since the pandemic. Let me ask you, just anecdotally, not research studies or anything, but you, because I think you're one of the most observant, intuitive people I know. Um, did you notice during the shelter in place, the pandemic, the kind of like when people hunkered down and they're in their own little bubbles, literally and figuratively? Did you notice that it seemed like people were, recalibrating a little more and being more patient, being willing to sit back and relax, being mindful and respectful of white space and transitions? Did it seem like that was more present?
I think so. Yeah, I absolutely think so. I mean, and think about the concept of time when it comes to this, right, Coach Brew? Is the pandemic in some regards seem like yesterday? In some regards, man, it seems like a lifetime ago now, man. When that hit, was it 2020? Was it 2021? When did it stop? When did it lift? Every situation, every region then was different. I think it did, man. It put the brakes on everything, which immediately forced us to slow down, change the rhythm of life. But then what happened is once we started lifting that, once we started coming out, man, we were coming out of the gates firing, man. I mean, let's go, right? Because then now there was a little sense of angst that we fall behind. And the way we're going to catch up here is move faster.
Mhm.
That doesn't change. It's not like, hey, when prices go up, they're not going to go back down. You know what I'm saying? It's not like
Yeah,
we then slow down automatically. No, we have to really be deliberate about it. And that's the part that I've noticed.
yeah, it's pretty fascinating. What do you think people get wrong with the whole concept of the path to patience, just trying to become a more patient person? I'm like the least, like, I'm in love with this book and the whole concept because I'm like the least patient person I know. Like like, what do you think people get wrong or is most misunderstood about this whole? I mean, this is a big
Yeah.
idea. This
Yeah.
is what I would describe as a very big idea. What do you
Yeah.
think people get
When
wrong?
do we need to be patient? Okay. So look, if we are driving and we have a boulevard of green lights, I'm not saying stop at the green light. I'm saying, man, keep a foot on the gas, man. Go. If things are great in life, by all means, man, go. But
Yep.
what happens is we don't reach our destination by always having green lights. There's going to be a lot of red lights. There's going to be a lot of setbacks. There's going to be a lot of stops. And if we keep having the foot on the gas in those situations when things are wrong, now we're not trusting the process of time. And now what we're trying to do is just work ourselves out of it. Look, we're still driving, but you got to stop at the red lights. And so life is going to feed that to us. So what I am saying is when adversity hits, when the setbacks hit, those are the times to stop, reflect, breathe. Don't just do something, sit there. When things are great in life, by all means, man, keep the foot on the gas. It's just when the setbacks happen, that's the time that we really need to pause, reflect, breathe, take stock of everything. Let's look at our processes. Let's look at what have we changed? What do we need to change? What we need to get better at? What do we need to stop doing? And, the reason why it's so difficult is because it's more about subtraction than it is addition.
That's the mental game in a nutshell, right? Rob, where can people purchase the book?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, man. It's can'twaitbook.com is the best. We got do you have the patient personality quiz on there? We've got infographics to download. And we're going to be launching the course, man, in terms of patients.
Cool. Yeah. I'll put a link to the website in the show notes for everybody. Also link to drrobbell.com. And Rob, if you're watching on YouTube, Rob's dog, the cutest chocolate lab on the planet. What's her name?
Her name is Dormy. It's a golf term. Basically
Gotcha.
means you can't lose. Yeah, she just busts in my office whenever she wants.
Yeah, Dormy just came in and she's hanging out. I love your posts on social media with her. She just seems like the best running companion ever.
Yeah. But she loves it, man.
But I just forgot what I was going to ask you. You have a podcast as well. Take a moment this is what I was going to ask you. Take a moment to shamelessly plug everything you got going on. I know you got a course coming up for I Can't Wait to Be Patient, but what else do you have? Because your podcast, I love, and I'd love to share it with my listeners.
Yeah. Mental Toughness Podcast with Dr. Rob Bell. When we talk about, obviously mental toughness, talk with coaches, leaders, athletes. And then I want you on there at the end of the summer. So this quest that you're going down, I think would be a perfect topic in terms of golf. And then we talk about hinge moments, man, that one moment, person or event that makes all the difference in our lives.
Yeah. And for people who don't know, I'm taking at least part of every Friday off this summer. A, because life is short, and B, because summer is really short in Maine. So I want to get out and just enjoy golfing with friends. Different friend every Friday. Just an opportunity to get closer to the people in my orbit, so to speak, and go to my local golf course and walk 9 holes. So it'll be fun. Walk 9 holes.
Big part of golf, man.
Forced to be a little more patient than when you just hop in and storm off after a bad shot. So, Rob, thanks for coming on. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Coach Brew.
It's again, it is can'twaitbook.com, drrobbell.com. I Can't Wait to Be Patient. The fastest way to get there. It's an amazing book. I think it will challenge a lot of the norms that it should challenge, and it's kind of counterintuitive, all the right reasons. I think you'll really enjoy it as much as I did. Rob, don't go anywhere. I want to talk to you, but I want to wrap up the podcast here. Again, I'm going to hold the QR code up if someone wants to scan it. You're watching the podcast. It's can'twaitbook.com and drrobbell.com. Rob, thanks for coming on, and we'll catch you all in the next episode of the Coach Brew Podcast.